Chosen one, listen carefully. What I am about to share is not for everyone. This message is urgent, sacred, and divinely timed. If you are not walking the path of God, if you are not aligned with His calling, you may feel uncomfortable hearing this. And that is your sign to step away. But if you are truly chosen, if your spirit has been set apart by God, you are still here for a reason. This message was released for you, and it has reached you at the exact moment your soul was prepared to receive it. I carry an important warning and a powerful instruction today. The season of waiting is shifting. The season of hiding is ending. Chosen one, it is time to lead the 144,000. This is not about titles or recognition. This is about divine responsibility, spiritual authority, and obedience to God's timing. Something deep within you already knows this. You have felt the stirring. You have sensed the pressure. And by the end of this message, many things in your life will finally make sense. Stay with me till the end, because what is about to be revealed will calm your mind and strengthen your spirit. Before we continue, chosen ones, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, and share this message with other chosen ones who need to hear it. And comment 444 in the comments to declare that you are aligned, grounded, and ready to stand in divine order.
Who the 144,000 really are. Truth beyond symbols. Chosen one, before you can ever lead, you must understand what you are being called to lead. And this is where many people lose clarity. The number 144,000 has been spoken about, debated, misunderstood, and even misused. But God never intended this to become a source of confusion or ego. The truth is far quieter, far deeper, and far more demanding than most people are ready for. The 144,000 are not defined by bloodline, denomination, popularity, or spiritual performance. They are defined by alignment, by obedience, by purity of intention. These are souls who chose God even when it cost them comfort, connection, and certainty. They are not perfect people. They are disciplined people. They are not loud. They are consistent. And most importantly, they are sealed not by words, but by how they live when no one is watching. You see, many want to be counted among the 144,000 because it sounds special, but very few want to live the life that qualifies them for it. This path requires restraint. It requires humility. It requires the ability to walk away from validation and remain anchored in truth. The 144,000 are not chasing attention. They are carrying responsibility. Understand this clearly. Being part of the 144,000 does not mean you are better than others. It means you are more accountable. It means God expects more discipline from you, more integrity from you, more obedience from you. Leadership in God's kingdom is not elevation above people. It is descent into service. And if your spirit does not resonate with that truth, then this calling will feel heavy instead of honorable. The world has taught leadership as dominance. God teaches leadership as stewardship. The 144,000 are entrusted, not exalted. They are assigned, not celebrated. They are positioned to carry light in places where others refuse to go. That is why their lives often feel heavier. That is why ease rarely follows them. God does not waste preparation on shallow assignments. Now listen carefully. Many people reading scripture focus on the number, but they ignore the condition of the heart. God has always been more interested in who you are becoming than what label you carry. The sealing of the 144,000 is not symbolic ink. It is spiritual alignment so deep that compromise becomes uncomfortable. It is a state where your conscience no longer negotiates with darkness. That is why you have always felt different, not superior, different. You could never fully enjoy what others enjoyed. You could never remain comfortable in sin. Even when you tried, peace left you. That was not punishment. That was protection. God was training your discernment long before you understood why. The 144,000 are those who chose refinement over rebellion. They learned to listen instead of react. They learned to observe instead of imitate. They learned patience when everything in them wanted movement. That is why God trusts them. Trust is built through consistency, not confession alone. And let me say something that may correct a misunderstanding. Not everyone who is spiritually gifted is meant to lead the 144,000. Giftedness and readiness are not the same thing. God does not place immature authority over sacred assignments. Leadership among the 144,000 requires emotional stability, spiritual maturity, and the ability to hold truth without becoming rigid. This is why God isolated you. This is why your circle became smaller. This is why distractions fell away. He was not punishing you. He was simplifying your spirit. The fewer voices you listened to, the clearer his voice became. That clarity is the foundation of leadership. You must also understand that the 144,000 are not passive followers. They are conscious carriers of truth. They do not blindly move. They discern. They do not act emotionally. They move intentionally. That is why leadership among them cannot be forceful. It must be grounded, calm, and rooted in example. Chosen one, leadership here is not about commanding people to follow you. It is about walking so aligned with God that others feel safe walking beside you. It is about embodying peace in a chaotic world. It is about holding spiritual authority without arrogance. And that is why God took his time with you. Many people could not survive the preparation you endured. They would have grown bitter. You grew deeper. They would have hardened. You became softer, but stronger. That is the mark of the 144,000. Strength with humility, conviction with compassion, discipline with grace. Do not rush to label yourself. Let your life speak. God never seals based on what we say. He seals based on what we consistently choose. And if you are still here, still listening, still seeking understanding instead of attention, that alone tells me something about your spirit. You were not drawn to this message by accident. Your soul recognizes truth even before your mind fully understands it. And now that you know what the 144,000 truly represent, you can begin to understand why leadership in this space is not a privilege. It is a sacred responsibility. And in the next part, I will explain why God prepared you for this role in silence, away from applause, away from support, and away from familiarity. Because what he was building in you could not be rushed, and it could not be witnessed too early. And let me steady your heart here, because some of you feel the weight of this understanding settling in. You are realizing that this path is not glamorous, it is not easy, and it is not casual. But do not let that discourage you. God never assigns weight without also supplying strength. What feels heavy now will become natural once you are fully aligned. The 144,000 are not sustained by external motivation. They are sustained by inner conviction. When applause fades, they remain steady. When misunderstood, they remain anchored. When unseen, they remain faithful. This is why leadership among them requires emotional depth. You cannot lead those who discern truth unless you yourself are deeply rooted in it. And here is something many overlook. The 144,000 do not need to be convinced of truth. They need to be reminded of it. Leadership here is not about correction. It is about resonance. When you speak, something in them remembers who they are. That is why God refined your voice. That is why he refined your silence. If you have ever wondered why superficial conversations exhausted you, why shallow connections felt empty, why noise disturbed your spirit, now you understand. Your soul was being trained for depth, and depth is required to lead those who walk closely with God. This is not coincidence, this is confirmation. Why you were prepared in silence. Chosen one, this is the part where many emotions rise to the surface. Because when you look back at your life, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. God did not prepare you in crowds. He prepared you in silence. He did not train you in comfort. He trained you in separation. and for a long time, you did not understand why. There were seasons when you felt hidden, seasons when your voice went unheard, seasons when your loyalty was repaid with betrayal, when your sincerity was met with misunderstanding, and when your obedience seemed to produce no visible reward. That silence was not absence. It was intention. God was doing a deep work that could not survive distraction. You see, public preparation builds performance. Silent preparation builds character. And character is the foundation of spiritual leadership. God will never place authority on someone whose inner world is unstable. So before he entrusted you with influence, he entrusted you with solitude. That is why people walked away. That is why relationships dissolved without explanation. That is why doors closed even when you were qualified. God was not rejecting you. He was protecting what he was forming. Some people could not stay because they would have interfered with the process. Others could not understand because they were never meant to. Silence stripped you. It stripped you of false identity. It stripped you of dependency on approval. It stripped you of the need to be understood by everyone. And while it hurt, it also clarified. You learned to sit with yourself. You learned to listen. You learned to hear God without noise. This is where many people would have grown bitter. You grew inward. You reflected. You questioned yourself instead of blaming the world. That alone reveals spiritual maturity. God watched how you responded when no one was watching. He watched whether you would harden or soften. And you chose depth. The isolation you experienced was not loneliness in God's eyes, it was intimacy. While others were distracted by noise, you were being taught discernment. While others were rushing for visibility, you were being trained in patience. And patience is not passive, it is disciplined trust. Let me speak directly to the pain you rarely talk about. The pain of being misunderstood by people you loved. The pain of being judged for your silence. The pain of carrying clarity while others accused you of distance. God allowed that pain because leadership requires the ability to stand firm without explanation. You were taught not to defend yourself unnecessarily. You were taught to let truth speak over time. You were taught that silence can be more powerful than argument. These are not accidental lessons. These are leadership tools. And yes, there were nights when you questioned God, nights when you wondered if you were forgotten, nights when you asked why obedience felt so lonely. Those questions did not disqualify you. They refined you. God is not threatened by honest questioning. He is threatened by prideful certainty. And you never stopped seeking him, even when you did not understand him. The silence also healed you in ways you did not recognize at first. It forced you to confront wounds you kept avoiding. It brought unresolved emotions to the surface. It slowed you down enough to feel what you had been suppressing. And healing cannot happen at the speed of distraction. That is why God removed stimulation. That is why he reduced your circle. That is why familiar comforts no longer satisfied you. He was recalibrating your nervous system. He was teaching your spirit to find safety in him alone. Leaders who depend on people for stability will collapse under pressure. You needed to become internally anchored, not emotionally numb, but emotionally grounded. You needed to learn how to be steady, even when circumstances were unstable. Silence teaches that better than any sermon ever could. Some of you think you lost time. You did not. You gained depth. While others were accumulating experiences, you were accumulating wisdom. While others were networking, you were discerning. While others were building images, you were building substance. And substance lasts. Silence also purified your intentions. It revealed why you wanted to serve God in the first place. Was it to be seen, or was it to be aligned? When no one was affirming you, when no one was clapping, when no one was acknowledging your faithfulness, you stayed. That answer alone tells God everything he needs to know. This is why God trusts you. Trust is not built through loud declarations. It is built through quiet consistency, through obedience without reward, through faithfulness without recognition. The preparation in silence also sharpened your discernment. You became more observant. You noticed energy shifts. You learned to read between words. You learned that not everything spoken is truthful, and not everything quiet is empty. That awareness is essential when leading spiritually aware people. The 144,000 cannot be led by emotional impulse. They require leaders who can sense without reacting. Leaders who can pause without panicking. Leaders who can hold space without control. Silence taught you all of that. And let me say this clearly. The silence is ending not because you demanded it to end, but because you matured within it. God does not release leaders when they are tired of waiting. He releases them when waiting no longer controls them. You no longer need external validation to feel secure. You no longer need constant reassurance to stay faithful. You no longer confuse movement with progress. That is how God knows you are ready for more. So if you ever wondered why your journey felt slower, heavier, and lonelier than others, now you understand. God was not delaying you. He was deepening you. And depth is non-negotiable for those called to lead the 144,000. In the next part, I will explain the difference between being called and being sent, because many people receive the call, but only those prepared in silence are trusted with the timing. And there is one more truth you need to hear, because it brings peace to the parts of you that still ache. The silence was also God teaching you how to hear Him without urgency. Before, you may have rushed decisions, you may have reacted emotionally, but in the quiet, you learned to pause. You learned to wait until clarity settled instead of forcing outcomes. That restraint is not weakness, it is wisdom. Silence trained your nervous system to remain calm in uncertainty. That is why chaos no longer excites you and drama no longer attracts you. You have outgrown noise. You crave substance, truth, and stillness. That craving is not withdrawal. It is refinement. And notice this. The silence did not make you colder. It made you more compassionate. You became slower to judge and quicker to understand. You learned that people act from wounds, not just intentions. Leaders who lack compassion become controlling. Leaders shaped in silence become safe. So do not resent the quiet seasons. They were sacred classrooms. Every unanswered prayer, every delayed breakthrough, every quiet morning was shaping your inner posture. God was not preparing you to impress people, He was preparing you to carry them. And now, as the noise slowly returns, you will notice something. It no longer controls you, because you were formed in the stillness. The difference between being called and being sent. Chosen one, this is where clarity replaces confusion. Many people know they are called by God, but very few understand when they are sent. And misunderstanding this difference is what causes burnout, frustration, and spiritual disappointment. You were protected from that, even when it felt like delay. A calling is an invitation. A sending is an authorization. God calls many hearts, but He sends only those who are ready to carry responsibility without losing alignment. The call awakens you. The sending positions you. And between those two moments is preparation that cannot be skipped. You knew you were called long before now. You felt it early. You sensed that your life carried purpose beyond survival. That awareness did not come from ambition. It came from recognition. Your spirit recognized God's voice even before your mind could explain it. But recognition alone does not equal readiness. This is why God slowed you down. When someone is sent too early, they rely on passion instead of wisdom. Passion burns fast. Wisdom sustains. God was not trying to silence your passion. He was teaching it discipline. Because undisciplined passion creates damage, even with good intentions. You may have wondered why opportunities appeared and disappeared, why doors opened but did not fully release. That was not confusion, that was calibration. God was testing how you handle anticipation, whether you would rush ahead or remain obedient, whether you would interpret movement as permission or wait for instruction. Being called feels exciting. Being sent feels sobering. When God sends someone, He does not just give them direction. He gives them weight. You begin to feel responsibility for others, not just concern for yourself. You become slower to speak, slower to judge, and more aware of consequences. That is how you know the sending is approaching. Another difference is this. When you are only called, you still seek validation. When you are sent, you seek alignment. Applause loses its grip. Recognition feels secondary. Obedience becomes primary. You start measuring success by peace, not by attention. This is why God waited until your identity stabilized. He did not want your sense of worth tied to results. Leaders who lead for validation will manipulate without realizing it. Leaders who lead from alignment can be trusted. And let me say something important. Fear does not disqualify you from being sent. Pride does. You may still feel nervous. You may still question yourself. That does not mean you are unready. It means you understand the weight of what you are stepping into. God never sends those who feel invincible. He sends those who feel dependent on Him. You also need to understand that sending does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks quiet. Sometimes it looks like consistency. Sometimes it looks like simply standing where you are, but standing differently. Sent leaders do not always move locations. They move atmospheres. This is why your presence feels heavier now, why people open up to you without explanation, why your words carry more impact even when you speak less. That is not coincidence. That is authority settling in. When God sends, He also covers. You will notice that things begin to align without force. Resistance still exists, but it no longer confuses you. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. That shift alone tells you something has changed. Do not compare your sending to someone else's timeline. God sends according to capacity, not competition. Some are sent publicly, some are sent privately. Both matter. Both are seen. And here is the part that brings peace. Being sent does not mean you suddenly have all the answers. It means you trust God enough to move step by step. Clarity unfolds with obedience, not before it. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time. The waiting did not disqualify you. It qualified you. And now, as the sending approaches, you may feel a quiet seriousness settling in. That is not heaviness. That is readiness. In the next part, I will explain what it truly means to lead without force, because the leadership God is giving you does not resemble the leadership the world celebrates. There is also a subtle shift that happens when the sending draws near, and I want you to recognize it so you do not resist it. You begin to feel less impulsive and more deliberate. Decisions take longer, not because you are unsure, but because you are more aware. You feel the weight of impact. You think beyond yourself. That awareness is not hesitation. It is responsibility awakening. When you were only called, you could afford to move quickly. When you are being sent, speed becomes secondary to precision. God is not rushing you because what you will carry requires accuracy. A sent leader understands that one careless word can undo months of trust. One emotional reaction can confuse those who are watching. That is why God slowed your speech and sharpened your listening. You may also notice that certain desires have fallen away, not because they were sinful, but because they were unnecessary. God removes excess before He releases authority. He simplifies your life so your focus becomes clean. Sent leaders do not have the luxury of divided attention. Another sign of sending is this. You stop trying to prove your calling. You stop explaining yourself. You stop needing others to agree with you. Not out of pride, but out of peace. You realize that validation is not required when instruction is clear. That quiet confidence is not arrogance. It is surrender. And finally, understand this. Being sent does not mean you will never pause again. God sends in seasons. He advances, then stabilizes. He moves, then grounds. Do not interpret future stillness as regression. Even sent leaders return to silence for recalibration. So if you feel both calm and serious at the same time, if you feel less rushed, but more focused. If your prayers have become simpler but deeper, that is not confusion. That is alignment. The call has matured, the sending is unfolding, and you are responding exactly as you should. What it means to lead without force. Chosen one, this is where God's way of leadership separates itself completely from the world's way, because what you are being prepared for cannot be sustained by pressure, control, or dominance. The leadership you are stepping into is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted, and if you try to lead with force, you will exhaust yourself and confuse those you are meant to guide. God never leads through fear. He leads through truth, and truth does not need to shout. Many people associate leadership with authority that demands obedience. But spiritual leadership invites alignment. It does not coerce. It does not manipulate. It does not rush. Leading the 144,000 requires a presence that is grounded enough to be trusted, not intense enough to intimidate. You have already been learning this, even without realizing it. Think about how your approach to people has changed. You no longer feel the need to convince. You no longer argue to be understood. You speak when it matters, and you remain silent when words would dilute truth. That is leadership without force. Force comes from insecurity. Control comes from fear of losing influence. God removes both before he releases authority. That is why he healed your need to be right. That is why he weakened your attachment to outcomes. Leaders who must control outcomes cannot steward people. The kind of leadership God gives you works through example. Your consistency speaks louder than instruction. Your peace teaches more than your words. People are not drawn to your certainty, they are drawn to your stability. In an unstable world, stability is rare, and rare things carry value. Leading without force also means understanding boundaries. Not everyone needs access to you. Not every question needs an answer. Not every opportunity needs a yes. Boundaries are not walls. They are frameworks that protect clarity. God taught you boundaries in silence, so you would not confuse compassion with self-betrayal. This is important, so listen carefully. You cannot lead spiritually aware people by overpowering them emotionally. The 144,000 discern energy before words. They sense intention before instruction. If your inner world is restless, they will feel it. If your spirit is grounded, they will trust it. That is why God spent so much time stabilizing you emotionally. Leadership without force requires self-mastery. You learned how to pause instead of react. You learned how to feel without being ruled by emotion. You learned how to remain present without absorbing chaos. These are not personality traits. These are spiritual disciplines. You may have noticed that people now come to you when they are overwhelmed, not when they are excited. That is not coincidence. God positions leaders where regulation is needed, not where excitement is loudest. You bring calm into spaces where anxiety dominates. That is authority. Leading without force also means releasing the need to rescue everyone. This is where many leaders fail. They overextend. They carry what is not theirs. They intervene where God is still working. But you have learned restraint. You have learned to trust God's timing in others. That restraint protects both you and them. Leadership does not mean fixing people. It means holding space while God does the transforming. And that requires humility. You are not the source. You are a vessel. The moment you confuse the two, force enters. God also taught you to lead yourself first. If you cannot regulate your thoughts, your reactions, your desires, you cannot steward influence. That is why your discipline increased quietly. Why your habits shifted. Why your tolerance for excess decreased. Self-leadership always precedes external leadership. Another truth you must accept is this: not everyone will follow you. And that is not failure. Jesus did not force alignment. He offered truth. Those who were ready followed. Those who were not walked away. Leadership without force accepts this without resentment. You are not called to gather everyone. You are called to walk faithfully. Those assigned to your path will recognize your spirit. You do not need to announce yourself. Authority that must be announced is not yet rooted. The leadership you carry will often feel subtle. You may wonder if you are doing enough, but God is not measuring volume. He is measuring alignment. Small, consistent actions anchored in truth shift more than dramatic gestures ever could. And let me reassure you here, leading without force does not mean being passive. It means being intentional. It means choosing when to speak and when to wait, when to step forward and when to hold back. That discernment is strength, not hesitation. You were not shaped to dominate. You were shaped to anchor, to steady, to guide. That is why your presence changes rooms without effort. That is why people feel seen around you without being interrogated. That is why your silence often speaks louder than your words. This is the kind of leadership the 144,000 respond to. Calm authority, grounded truth, steady presence. And this is why God trusted you with this role, because force was removed long before authority arrived. In the next part, I will help you understand the internal shift happening within you right now, because leadership begins internally before it ever becomes visible. There is another layer to leading without force that you must embody, and it is patience with process. Not just your own process, but the process of others. You have learned that growth cannot be rushed without damage. When people are pressured into transformation, they either resist or perform. Neither produces lasting change. So you learn to wait, to allow truth to settle rather than insisting it be accepted immediately. This patience did not come naturally. It was formed through disappointment, through watching people choose paths you knew would cost them, through resisting the urge to intervene. God taught you that guidance is most effective when it is offered, not imposed. That restraint protects dignity, and dignity builds trust. Leading without force also means knowing when not to engage. Silence is not avoidance when it is intentional. Sometimes your refusal to react is the very thing that interrupts unhealthy patterns. People notice when you no longer participate in chaos. That absence speaks. You are also learning how to carry authority without emotional charge. Your words no longer come from frustration or urgency. They come from clarity. And clarity has weight. When you speak calmly about something serious, people listen differently. They feel the truth instead of resisting it. This is why God refined your emotional responses. You no longer escalate energy to be heard. You trust truth to stand on its own. That trust is evidence of maturity. And finally, understand this. Leading without force does not mean you will never confront. It means when you do, it will be clean. No hidden agenda, no emotional residue, just truth delivered with steadiness. That kind of confrontation heals rather than wounds. You were not trained to overpower, you were trained to steady, and steadiness is the highest form of leadership in uncertain times. The internal shift happening right now. Chosen one, this part requires honesty, because what you are experiencing right now may feel unfamiliar, even unsettling if you don't understand it. Something inside you is shifting, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. And if you don't name it correctly, you might misinterpret alignment as anxiety and readiness as restlessness. What you are feeling is not confusion. It is recalibration. You may have noticed that your tolerance for certain things has changed. Conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. Environments that once energized you now feel draining. Even goals you once chased no longer hold the same appeal. This is not loss of passion. This is refinement of focus. God is narrowing your attention so your energy stops leaking into what no longer serves your assignment. This internal shift often begins with restlessness, not the anxious kind, but a quiet dissatisfaction. You feel like you are outgrowing something, but you cannot yet name what is next. That in-between space can feel uncomfortable, but it is sacred. It is where old versions of you dissolve before the new one fully forms. Your mind may feel more alert lately, more observant. You notice patterns more quickly. You sense when something is off without needing proof. This heightened awareness is not paranoia. It is discernment sharpening. Leaders cannot afford spiritual numbness. God is waking parts of you that were dormant. Emotionally, you may feel waves, moments of deep calm followed by moments of heaviness. This does not mean you are unstable. It means your inner world is reorganizing. Old emotional responses are losing their grip. New ones are not fully anchored yet. Give yourself patience here. Transition always feels messy before it feels steady. You may also notice changes in your body, sleep patterns shifting, a need for more rest or more stillness, times where your body asks you to slow down even when your mind wants to move forward. Listen to that. God often speaks through the body when the mind is too busy interpreting. Fatigue in this season is not weakness. It is integration. Another sign of this internal shift is detachment. You care, but you are not consumed. You love, but you are no longer entangled. This does not mean your heart has hardened. It means it has learned boundaries. Leaders who absorb everything burn out quickly. God is teaching you how to remain compassionate without carrying what is not yours. You may also feel less reactive. Things that once triggered you now pass through you with less resistance. Or when you do react, you recover faster. That is not emotional suppression. That is regulation. And regulation is essential for leadership. You cannot steady others if you are constantly thrown off balance. Pay attention to your prayers. They may have become simpler, less dramatic, more honest. You may find yourself asking for clarity instead of outcomes, strength instead of escape, peace instead of control. That shift reveals maturity. God listens closely to simple prayers spoken from alignment. You may also notice an increase in solitude, not because you are withdrawing, but because you are integrating. Your spirit needs quiet to settle into this new frequency. Noise interrupts that process. This does not mean you are meant to isolate forever. It means this season requires intentional stillness. Let me reassure you here. Feeling pressure does not mean something is wrong. Diamonds are formed under pressure. But pressure must be balanced with rest. God never intended you to grind your way into leadership. He is forming you from the inside out, not pushing you from the outside in. Some of you are experiencing a strange mix of confidence and humility. You feel more secure in who you are, yet more aware of your dependence on God. That paradox is a sign of true readiness. Arrogance disappears. Self-doubt loses its grip. What remains is quiet trust. You may also find that you are less interested in explaining yourself. You do not feel the need to justify your choices or convince others of your intentions. That does not mean you have stopped caring. It means you trust God to interpret your life for you. Leaders who explain themselves too much dilute their authority. This internal shift also affects how you see time. You are less rushed, less frantic. You understand that alignment matters more than speed. When you move too fast, you outrun wisdom. God is teaching you to move when prompted, not when pressured. If you feel a pull toward responsibility, but not toward spotlight, that is important. God is aligning your desires with your assignment. You want impact, not attention, substance, not image. That desire was cultivated intentionally. And let me say this gently. This internal shift may create distance between you and people who are still attached to old versions of you. They may not recognize you anymore. That is painful but temporary. You are not abandoning them. You are evolving. And not everyone can walk with you into the next season. Do not resist this process. Do not rush it. Do not label it negatively. God is stabilizing you at a deeper level. What feels unfamiliar now will soon feel natural. And when that happens, you will realize that leadership did not suddenly arrive. It settled. In the next part, we will talk about the responsibility of the chosen leader, because understanding responsibility keeps authority clean, humble, and anchored in God rather than ego. There is also a quiet grieving that sometimes accompanies this internal shift, and I want to acknowledge it so you do not misunderstand yourself. You may find yourself mourning versions of you that no longer fit. Old dreams, old roles, old ways of relating, not because they were wrong, but because they are complete. Completion can feel like loss when you are emotionally honest. You may even feel moments of emotional flatness, where highs and lows soften. That is not spiritual dryness. That is emotional stabilization. God is leveling your inner landscape so you are not ruled by extremes. Leaders who live in extremes cannot provide consistency, and consistency is what creates safety for others. You are also learning how to hold clarity without urgency. Before, when you understood something, you felt the need to act immediately. Now, you can hold understanding quietly and wait. That ability to carry insight without forcing expression is a sign of maturity. Truth does not expire when it is held patiently. Another subtle shift is how you experience joy. It may feel quieter now, less explosive, but deeper. You are no longer chasing emotional highs. You are settling into contentment. That contentment is not complacency. It is trust. And trust is the emotional posture of those who know God is guiding them. You may also notice that your inner dialogue has changed. The voice of self-criticism is softer. The voice of discernment is clearer. You are no longer constantly correcting yourself. You are listening. That shift brings peace to your mind and steadiness to your decisions. This internal shift is also teaching you discernment around energy. You know when to engage and when to step back. You are no longer available to everything. That selectivity is not selfishness. It is stewardship. You cannot pour into everyone without discernment and remain aligned. And finally, understand this. This season may feel inward, but it is not stagnant. Roots grow downward before branches grow outward. God is anchoring you deeply, so when visibility comes, you do not sway. What feels quiet now is strength being stored. So if you feel calmer but more serious, lighter but more focused, less reactive but more aware, do not question it. You are not losing yourself. You are settling into who you were always meant to be. The responsibility of the chosen leader. Chosen one, authority without responsibility becomes distortion. And this is why God is careful about who he entrusts with leadership. What you are stepping into is not symbolic. It is lived. It is carried daily, quietly, and consistently. The first responsibility of the chosen leader is accountability to God, not to people. When your primary reference point becomes human approval, your decisions will drift. But when your reference point remains God's instruction, clarity stays intact even when opinions shift. This is why God taught you how to stand alone before allowing you to stand before others. Leadership in God's order demands integrity in private. What you tolerate when no one sees you will eventually shape what others experience through you. That truth is not meant to intimidate you, it is meant to ground you. Integrity simplifies leadership. You no longer need to manage images when your inner life is aligned. Another responsibility is emotional stewardship. You are responsible for your reactions, not others' responses. You will encounter projection, misunderstanding, and resistance. How you hold yourself in those moments teaches more than any lesson you speak. Calm presence under pressure builds trust faster than explanation ever could. Chosen leadership also requires consistency, not intensity. Consistency. Anyone can be intense for a season. Few can remain steady across time. God values endurance more than bursts of effort. That is why he refined your habits, your rhythms, and your boundaries. You are not meant to impress. You are meant to be reliable. There is also responsibility in discernment. You must learn when to engage and when to remain silent. Not every issue is yours to address. Not every question is yours to answer. Over-involvement weakens authority. Discernment protects it. God does not expect you to carry everything. He expects you to carry what is assigned. Humility is another non-negotiable responsibility. The moment leadership becomes about identity instead of service, it begins to erode. You are not the source of wisdom, you are a steward of it. Staying teachable keeps authority clean. Pride makes leaders brittle. Humility keeps them grounded. You are also responsible for how you handle influence. People will listen to you. They will trust you. That trust is sacred. It must never be used to control, manipulate, or elevate yourself. God watches closely how leaders handle power, especially subtle power. Your restraint is as important as your action. Another responsibility is self-care, though many misunderstand this. Rest is not withdrawal, it is maintenance. Burned-out leaders make reactive decisions. God does not reward exhaustion, He honors obedience. You are responsible for protecting your capacity so you can serve sustainably. There will be moments when leadership feels lonely again. Not like before, but different. Responsibility creates distance. Not everyone can walk at the pace of purpose. Do not interpret that distance as abandonment. It is part of the role. You are also responsible for repentance. Leaders are not perfect. They are accountable. When you miss something, you correct it quickly. You do not justify, you realign. That humility keeps authority intact. Let me say this clearly. Responsibility does not mean fear, it means awareness. God did not choose you to burden you. He chose you because you can carry weight without becoming rigid, because you can hold seriousness without losing compassion. And finally, understand this. Your responsibility is not to be extraordinary, it is to be faithful. God does extraordinary things through faithful people. In the final part, I will help you step forward without fear, grounded in trust, peace, and divine assurance. Conclusion. Step forward without fear. Chosen one, take a breath here. Let everything you have heard settle gently within you. You were never meant to rush into this role, and you were never meant to shrink away from it either. God does not summon without sustaining. He does not assign without equipping, and He does not choose by mistake. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still seeking alignment rather than attention tells me something important about your spirit. You were shaped for this moment long before you recognized it. Every delay refined you. Every silence strengthened you. Every letting go made room for truth. Nothing was wasted. You are not stepping forward alone. God goes before you. He steadies you from within. You are not expected to be perfect. You are expected to be faithful. Leadership in God's kingdom is not about having all the answers. It is about staying anchored in Him while you walk. So release fear. Fear is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to trust deeper. You are not being asked to perform. You are being asked to remain aligned. Let obedience be your confidence. Let humility be your strength. Let peace be your confirmation. Do not look around to measure yourself against others. Your assignment is specific. Your timing is intentional, and your preparation was personal. Walk forward quietly. Walk forward steadily. Walk forward without forcing doors. What is assigned to you will recognize you. Before we close, chosen ones, if this message resonated with your spirit, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it with other chosen ones who need this confirmation. And once again, comment 444 in the comments as a declaration that you are grounded, aligned, and ready to lead in divine order. Remain steady, remain faithful. God is with you.